The R35 Nissan Gtr is now officially an old car, but tell me it doesn't still have presence. Power is now up to 565 horsepower thanks to revised ignition timing and increased boost pressure. Outside there are lots of small aero tweaks that reduce lift and, I reckon, attractiveness. Inside there are many changes that help to negate the ageing process, but the GTR now feels old next to the latest German rivals. But never underestimate these things, they have a habit of always surprising you. This one is also very bronze, and I quite like that.
Have you ever tried driving a Nissan GTR slowly on the public highway? It's really difficult because I don't know many cars that egg you on quite like Godzilla. It just wants to go fast the whole time. This car is now nearly 8 years old. The increases for 2017 model year are not that significant. There's a bit more power and I think 1 foot-pound more torque. It looks a bit different and it's all a bit more effective and nicer looking inside. But the big news is that they've softened the car off a bit. So now the standard suspension mode is really quite supple and they've made the car much quieter inside. Us geeks call it NVH, that's noise, vibration and harshness. And frankly, whereas the old GTR for me was a pain in the neck, a car I didn't want to live with over long journeys, this one is now really comfortable. That's right, it's a slightly soft GTR and I like that because I'm a bit of a softie myself. It's all well and good driving the GTR up on these beautiful open Roman roads, but really we need to take it to a circuit and skid it about. For me, the GTR has always been something of an enigma because people go on about it. Straight line performance, that's why it's famous, isn't it? Take one, chip it up, give it 1,000 horsepower and watch it do 0 to 100 in about 4.5 seconds. That is quite some party trick, and it was the first of the modern generation of dual clutch transmission, twin turbocharged super sports cars. This thing was munching 911 turbos back in 2007, 2008. Can you believe that? It's nearly 9 years since I first drove one of these amazing cars. Well, this one's now got 565 horsepower and a bit more torque, and it's had some aero tweaks, and I think they've done something really great with the ride comfort, as I said, on the road. It's now more usable and the NVH is better, so it's not battering your ears. But on a circuit, the enigmatic quality for me is that the chassis is so interesting. This is a four-wheel drive vehicle that's so clever. It's trying to juggle torque to make you go fast, and therefore it's throwing it forwards and backwards and at times fighting the driver. And I've always found it so enjoyable going into battle with the GTR. We're at Landau today, it's nice and slippery, and instinctively I find myself being a wally. I don't care about lap times. What I care about is trying to put the thing into silly angles and seeing how it wants to respond, where it wants to throw torque, and what I can do to work with it and sometimes work against it. And the whole philosophy of the GTR is so completely crazy. I once sat through a lecture given by Mizuno-san, the father of this vehicle, who, well, he's an enigma himself. Fairly bonkers chap who had some fairly crazy ideas about vehicle dynamics, attributes, and what mattered. For example, he wanted mass. The fact this thing weighs about as much as the moon is no accident. He felt that mass gave him traction because it helped drive the tyres into the road surface. And the one thing this car is not lacking is traction on the road. It's amazing. And of course the differentials and the way that they've set the chassis up mean that it hides its mass very well. On circuit, it shouldn't be able to do the things it does. I mean, it weighs about as much as a 5 Series BMW. It's a huge vehicle, and yet it feels so agile because of this fast steering. But I just love jobbing about in it, I really do. So let's go to a corner and see what happens. If we give it a bit of gas, look at that, it's just rear wheel drive almost, and then I touch the throttle, it drags it straight. Here we go, here's an example. So, big throttle, big steering, no gas, straighten up. The moment I hit the throttle pedal, it just goes, and then you get this incredible sensation of the prow rising and those sticky Dunlops pulling performance out of what is a damp surface in a way I think no other car can match. And then there's the sound. It's got this really distinctive sound from inside and outside, a sort of whooshing, wheeshing, rushing of air, like it's doing something. It's almost changing the molecular structure of the air that's coming into it, and it makes this incredible noise. It's a deeply, deeply characterful vehicle as well. At times, people have accused this of being a bit Japanese, a bit sort of anodyne and boring and lacking personality. I can't think of any car that has more personality. At idle, it clicks and clacks, and when you engage drive from stationary, it makes all sorts of weird noises, and it purrs and hisses and buzzes, and I just love it. I can't believe it's so old, actually. Of course, you can drive it in a straight fashion as well, at which point you'll just be amazed at the level of grip that it can pull. This new slightly softer suspension, I think, helps because it gives it a bit more roll, and I feel the tyre gets the chance to work over bumps better. But the braking performance is fantastic. The engine just keeps pulling. A bit angrier at the top end now than it used to be, and still making a fantastic noise. It's a really, really fast car. I mean, you can match this thing against all your latest metal, and it will still be there or thereabouts. Now, normally at this point, we take all this gubbins out the onboard camera. We've recorded that, and then I go out and we try and slide around the corners to get the exterior shots that match what I'm saying inside the car. But the GTR is such a challenge that I want to leave this running today, so you can see the process of trying to make it work. Because to be honest with you, I don't know what's going to happen. I could tip into the corner the first time in third gear at 70, 80 miles an hour, and it might just understeer straight on, or I might get it just right and it might just oversteer. What we want is that oversteer shot. We do a couple of straight passes, obviously, but trying to agitate the car. I don't know whether it'll try and straighten itself up too quickly. That's what I love about this. Some people find it frustrating, but I really don't know what it's going to do, and you have to kind of respond quickly. If you get the steering input wrong when it goes, then you have to phone Nissan and go, sorry. Okay, so this is the fast part of land now. We've got 2 third, fourth gear fast corners, and this is the second one. I want to see if I can get a long linger. So I'm going to pitch it in now. No, see, it's just understeered there, and then on the exit it's giving me quite a big oversteer. So, next time round, I probably need to take some speed off, add a bit more steering angle going in, and be more brutal on that weight transfer when I back out of the throttle. Because the GTR's four-wheel drive chassis will give you a power oversteer, and it will give you a lift-off oversteer as well. It gives you both, which is more common now, but was very rare when the car came out. Here we go. So let's go in a bit quicker, see if I can back off. There she goes. Oh, and then it straightened up, and it went again. So I want that consistent slide. I got it to go. The circuit's got a bit drier there in the last few minutes, so what I need to do is probably carry a bit more speed, and then we can get that nice consistent slide that will give you the all the way through shot that we look for when we're making these videos. Speed is your friend when it comes to sliding. The faster you go, the more you can carry it through. Here we go, let's try again. So a bit more speed. There she goes. There she goes, adding power. Look at that, all the way through. That feels mental. What's that? Coming in at about 75, leaving at 90 miles an hour, and a dry track on the exit. Oh, I love my job. I feel so alive doing that. So naughty. Woo. Have a look at that. Have a look at that from the outside and see what it looks like. It'll look fantastic because there's leaves and slipperiness, and then there's dry on the exit. Oof. You don't need me jabbering. You just need to look at single slow-mo of a car. Lovely. I have never before shot a film on a Tesla Model S, but today I have the quick one, the P100D, and something more analog to drag it against. I'm sitting in a Tesla Model S for the first time in a long time, actually. I've only ever driven one of these before. I've slightly chosen to ignore the whole Tesla thing because it scares me, and I'm not very much into them, but we have a P100D today because everyone's been telling me that I have to drive one. It's amazing. It's so fast. So we're here at Bruntingthorpe to go fast. I have no idea how it works. So just off camera here is my boss, Charles Turner, who is going to tell me how to turn it on. Okay. Charles, away you go.
Press the controls button.
Controls button. There we go.
Okay, first thing we need to do is
wow, look at that.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? Condition the battery. So if you press under Ludacris mode, max battery power.
Where's Ludacris mode?
Ludacris mode is up
there.
Yeah,
there.
But underneath it, press that.
Yep.
And go max battery power.
Max battery power.
Yeah. So that's done. Get rid of that.
Yeah.
The next thing you need to do is to activate the Ludacris Plus Easter egg. You need to hold down the Ludacris icon in the drive settings for 5 seconds and select yes, bring it on.
What?
Press Ludacris for 5 seconds.
Right. Now what?
It should do something.
Yeah. So I've got a light speed. It looks like the Millennium Falcon going into light speed. It says here, are you sure you want to push the limits? This will cause accelerated wear of the motor, gearbox and battery. I'm offered no, I want my mummy, M-O-M-M-Y, or yes, bring it on. Yes, bring it on. It's heating and it's estimating it's 10 minutes for it to heat.
Right.
Simple then.
Yeah.
It's not the kind of thing you just activate down in Battersea in the traffic lights, is it?
No.
No. Let's go and have a drag race. What would you drag race it against? I'd drag race it against an icon of modern day performance that doesn't necessarily want to go that fast in a straight line of its own accord. In other words, requires some driver input. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the 911R. Oh my lord! Okay, the 0 to 100 mile an hour challenge is over and the 911 is absolutely roasted. I'm sorry I couldn't talk, but that's genuinely the first time I've done that. Wow. It explodes off the line. I mean, it's explosive, the acceleration. And I can see why people are so addicted to it. Oh, that's great fun. Okay, I'm being slightly quiet and contemplative because I've not experienced that sort of acceleration in a saloon car shape before. But my criticism of the Tesla Model S and its performance variants is that I think they're one-trick ponies. And I also think that acceleration in the modern era is about more than just going from 0 to 100. I want to know whether this thing is fast from 0 to 150. It's absurd, right? So, can he get ahead for a 150 mile an hour challenge? That's 110, and he's pegged me now. He's pegged me 120. He's coming back at me. 130. He's coming back at me. 140. He's coming back at me. 150 miles an hour, and it's beaten the 911R to 150. I didn't expect that. Slight change of plan here, which Neil won't like. I want to drive the 911 because I've got this awful feeling that I can make it get a bit closer, and I want to see what this thing looks like from the other car. I want to see what a 2-ton saloon car doing 0 to 60 in 2-point-something seconds looks like. Wow. So Charles has had to go and cool the battery down. It seems to have a very narrow operating window. It's either too hot or too cold. I had an auntie like that once. Never quite get the temperature right there. It's always too hot or too cold. Get me a glass of water, dear. Okay, there's some water to cool down. Oh, I haven't got a blanket, have you? That's the Tesla Model S. Like my auntie. Okay, so here we go. 0 to 150 miles an hour. Look at it go! So that's 100, 110, I'm catching him, 120, I've got you!
911R is coming up 130 and it's gone!
Yes! Yeah, at 135 we just go. Now I'm doing 170, he can't do that. So, it is just a 0 to 120 mile an hour machine, that's what it is. It absolutely nails it to 120, but then, yeah, the good old internal combustion engine comes good. Dead impressive. Dead impressive. Do you know what? By both cars.
Little grin in that 911R, keeping petrol power alive. You gotta say though, this thing is so impressive.
I rest my case. People in the car, and they make noises when it accelerates because it's unusually fast. We've done the drag race thing, and we've proved that it's really fast to 120. We kind of already knew that because the internet is alive with drag racing videos of these things munching hypercars and supercars from rest to 120. What I want to know, is it any good on the road? The ride's not bad, but I've got a bit of vertical movement that I wasn't expecting, so it gets itself quite airborne. This is a bumpy road though. There's a little bit of noise in the cabin. This is the other thing. In not having engine and transmission noise, if you hear a little creak or something from the dash, you really notice it. £130,000 for this model. This is the Mac Daddy, this is everything. So this is all the performance and all the range. Doesn't feel like that inside here at all. The big screen is most impressive. You'll see it in a minute. I'll put my hand over it. It is double the size of anything I've ever seen in another car before. It's very much next gen, so I can see the autopilot thing spotting me exactly on the road. It's got the two cars in front of me positioned perfectly. It knows what's going on. I get the feeling it knows things about me that I don't want it to know. Like it knows some of the bad things I did at prep school. It's the regenerative braking that's the most obvious thing. And it leaves you out of sync with other traffic because when you back off, it regens and gives you a lot of automatic braking without touching the brake pedal. So when you go to brake, all the other cars coast like a normal car coasts, but this thing stops faster. So you have to sort of cover the throttle a bit like you're driving an automatic in traffic. I quite like the sparseness. At this speed, it is incredibly quiet. I mean, it's quieter than an S-Class. In town, I can completely see why people love these things. Because for the traffic light Grand Prix, it's unbeatable. And I suppose the lack of noise is appealing in that respect. And all of this is so sci-fi, it's so next gen. I sort of wonder why the exterior looks so conventional, sort of like a 2 or 3 box hatchback, when they had the chance to redesign everything, because they don't have the constraints of a transmission tunnel, do they, or a normal engine. £130,000, but you don't have to put fossil juice in it. But how much do you spend on fossil juice, and how much does this thing depreciate? Those are the numbers I really want to know. Let's pull out of a T-junction and just put our foot down. Dear Lord, that was 50 miles an hour in that time. I can see that people become quite addicted to that sort of immediate step off acceleration because it's uncanny. The thing's heavy, really heavy, and that in combination with four-wheel drive and just being pushed into the ground by that mass. I think what people like me want to know is it actually any good to drive? Well, it's naffing fast. The steering doesn't really have any great life to it, but I can place it. And that weight does give it a sort of sure-footed feel on the road. It just feels squished into the tarmac. That's riding pretty well. It's quite a bumpy road. Okay, I'm impressed. Body control's pretty good. It doesn't need to go much faster than I'm going now. Brakes, it doesn't like stopping repeatedly from very high speed, but at these sorts of speeds, you can sort of throw it in. Okay, yeah, I'm quite impressed by this. Do I mind that it doesn't have an internal combustion engine? Not really for doing this, because the cars that I enjoy the most that are in this class, you know, a sort of 5-7 series size car, well, engineers have spent the last 30 years trying to make the powertrains as quiet as possible, and this beats them all because it's not making any noise. But in that time, my range has gone from 170 to 150, so I think we're going to have a little charge and then have a bit more thinking about this very, very clever machine.
This is the flagship Tesla Model S. That means all the power and all the range. It costs £130,000 and Tesla claims 0 to 60 in, wait for it, 2.4 seconds. Yes, 2.4 seconds. It weighs 2,240 kilograms, has a claimed range of 381 miles, but not if you use all of that performance. Top speed is 155 miles an hour. The power is rated as the equivalent of 603 horsepower, torque 713 pounds per feet. Technically, it's so clever it really does make your brain hurt, yet it somehow doesn't feel like an expensive car. The cabin is completely dull, just some old Merc switchgear, a couple of screens and some cheap leather.
So this is a windy piece of road, and I have no idea what it'll be like down here. This is technical as well. This has been the undoing of a few quite good cars, so I'm fascinated to know what it's like. I mean, the speed is without any question at all. So we're through the full travel of the damper a couple of times. Not too bad. It's got an awful lot of compression damping in it. You can feel it, so it gets airborne and then it controls the movement very quickly, almost too quickly. And it feels like if it had a second input at that point, it might just give up because the damper's still dealing with the previous bump. But you can go really fast in this, and it doesn't fall apart. It's not a shambles. I feared it might be, but it really isn't. But if you like going very, very fast from 0 to 120 miles an hour, where you're allowed, there aren't many cars that can do what this can do. But why is it doesn't light my fuse? I don't get excited about it. I admire what it can do, but it sort of stays there. The surprise of the package is how good it is on the road. There's something unnatural about the way that it takes these bumps though. It leaves you with quite a porpoising motion, and there are two guys in the car with me now, one recording sound and Nilo in the front, and both of them feel quite ill from the motion. And do you know what? I don't feel too brilliant either. Brutally effective thing. Brutally. Quite brutal on one's tummy as well, because when we stop, these two are going to be sick.
The Honda Civic Type-R, the yobbish one. Can you believe they've just made a new one? I didn't think the old one was very old, but now there's more power, more sophisticated rear suspension, and even more offensive styling. But what I want to know is if this signals the return of the Honda we all loved and lost. So I thought we'd take a trip down memory lane at 8,000 RPM. The 2001 Civic Type-R is like a little racing car. Independent suspension both ends, a 1998 twin-cam normally aspirated 4-cylinder motor with 200 horsepower and a 1270 kilogram curb weight. It was designed to be thrashed, and boy were they thrashed. The big change for the 2017 Type-R you can't even see. It's the rear suspension. It's now fully independent, like it always should have been on the previous model. It now has 320 horsepower and 295 foot-pounds of torque, which is way down on an Audi RS3, but then the Honda weighs just 1,380 kilograms because the interior is made of eggshells and it's only two-wheel drive. First up, the old car.
So cast your mind back to 2001, 16 years ago. What was going on? Well, Big Brother wasn't rubbish, and Honda had just released the GT3 Civic with a Type-R version, which frankly rewrote the hot hatch book. Here was a car with 200 horsepower from an engine that revved to 8,000 RPM or thereabouts. Only had 200 horsepower, but 142 foot-pounds of torque, and you had to wring it by the neck to make it deliver. But when it did, you had one of the best gearboxes of any production car. And I'm in one now, and I tell you what, modern hot hatches could learn a lot from this thing. To start with, it feels like a hatchback to me. It's small, vaguely disposable, the plastics are hard, it feels cheap, and it feels like the money's been spent on the suspension, the engine, and the gearbox. This thing is joyous. Still feels very quick, still feels very lively, small, compact, and when you get it above 6,000 RPM into the VTEC, wow! And it's just so immediate. I'm sitting too high, the dashboard is complete crud. I mean, it is exactly what my generation thought hot hatchback should be. What's quite important for me as well is that this car was affordable. It was a stretch, but if you were 23, 24, you were a graduate and you borrowed some money, you could afford to buy this. And I'm not entirely sure you could buy the new car at whatever it is, 35 grand when spec'd. But this thing, it just reminds you of the company Honda used to be. On the one hand, it's great to remember the heyday of Honda engineering. I mean, this is a car that had effectively a racing engine in it with a race transmission, fully independent rear suspension, and you could just buy it instead of a Golf GTI. But it was so much more specialised, so much better to drive. But then, of course, they went down a different route. They took away the independent rear end and they gave it a beam. They kind of took the mickey. The replacement to this car was nothing like as good. This one is spectacularly good. In fact, it's done 43,000 miles, this example, and it feels fresh as you like. The steering is good. The throttle response is exceptional. It's not too fast. It's very skittish, I have to say. And this is where I have to probably eat some humble pie. I'm not entirely certain I notice it's got an independent rear end because the back is so skippy and lively. It might as well be a beam. Maybe this one needs a bit of tuning and some new bushes and some new dampers, but I'm quite surprised at how lively the back end feels. But the whole thing is immediate. Little things like, look at the gap between the gear lever and the steering wheel. Tiny. You just always felt that you were ready to grab another gear, because in this thing you row it like crazy. And it doesn't actually go that fast. Well, against contemporary hot hatchbacks, it's very fast. Compared to these modern turbo nutters, well, it's 120 horsepower down, isn't it? But it doesn't matter. As a driving experience, this thing is superb. Might need to have one of these in the old shed. Very, very enjoyable. What an engine. Nearly 8,000 RPM. Reliably so. And of course, you have to take it out to 8, so that when you change gear, you drop back into the VTEC. You don't want to drop out of the VTEC. It is to car driving what riding a two-stroke motorcycle is to motorcycles. You know, you've got to stay on it to enjoy it. When you're out of the VTEC, the personality change of the car is remarkable. You just think to yourself, well, I'm in a quite a slow, rather gutless, noisy hot hatch that doesn't appear to have any ride comfort. But the moment you get up it, bang, what a thing. Driving position is way too high. Steering can't be adjusted for reach. It's just on a sort of a rake adjustment, which is fairly hopeless. You do feel like you're sitting in a kind of Renault Scenic, but otherwise, God, I don't know whether this serves to remind us how great Honda was or how ropey it might have become. Anyhow, I'm told reliably that this new Civic Type-R is back in the great game. So let's jump in that and see if we can find any common DNA, and to discover whether Honda has rediscovered its better days. So the new Civic Type-R does have an independent rear end. Hold on, wait there. I'm just going to do something a bit naughty. I'm going to take my hands off the wheel and clap. Well done, Honda. Because you're back to your best in that respect. This car feels very sophisticated. Feels like it can handle all the power. But my, oh my, am I finding this thing complicated and conflicting as well. Because there's so much that's right about this car, but essentially it feels as if they just made a couple of extra tweaks or some slightly different decisions. They would have absolutely nailed it. As it is, I think it probably is filed under the flawed genius section. Let's start with the engine. Only, 10 horsepower up on the old version, but a mega engine because it's turbocharged, but also has the variable valve timing, so it wants to rev. Torque down low, power up high. It's fantastic. Doesn't sound that great though, and with the third exit on the tailpipe, I thought we were going to get a load more whooshing and wheeshing and popping and parping, but there isn't really much. The steering, well, obviously there's 3 different settings here. There's a normal setting called comfort, then there's sport, then there's race. In comfort, it's light, it's electric, obviously, like everything else these days. In sport, it gets heavier, in race, it gets heavier still. But off-centre, in comfort mode, it is quite indistinct. You don't quite know where you are, actually. So you want it in the sport mode to have a sense of where you're on the road. And it gets very complicated at this point because the DNA button, for want of a better phrase, the switch here that gives you comfort, sport and race, doesn't allow you to select which one of the options you want per area. So you can't have light steering, heavy dampers or stiff dampers and then an aggressive powertrain. You have to stay within the parameters they've set, and I think that's a huge mistake because to me, I want my suspension in comfort, I want my steering in sport, and I want my engine and gearbox in race, but I can't do that. So I'm either stuck in comfort, which is actually as I drive the car because I want the suspension supple, but then I have steering that's just a bit too light and indistinct, and the engine just feels a little bit flat. I don't know why they don't have the ability to have a sort of choose your own button, like the Germans call it individual, don't they, where you get your own choices. It's a real shame, I think. And if you want to feel the DNA link between this car and the EP3, it's the gear shift. In terms of the shift quality, short, precise, just feels right. And then the clutch is just bang on as well. The moment you get in the car, you shift cleanly, you feel like a good driver because it's just so well matched. So not being able to separate out the choice of steering weight, of suspension stiffness and throttle aggressiveness, let's say, I think it's a massive mistake because it means you're stuck in a particular personality of car. But having said that, the suspension in comfort mode is fantastic for UK roads. It just feels so plush. And I can't believe I'm saying this, it doesn't need to be four-wheel drive for this car. It has so much traction, 245 section Contis all round, that you never even think about traction. And the diff, that locking differential, so clever. I've got no wheel fight, torque steer you might call it. It just stays in the middle of the road, even on quite heavily crowned stuff. It doesn't sniff out those cameras and throw you across the road. It's just really, really impressive. But here's the thing, well, there's two things really. Number one, I think this car looks absurd. I know it's not my job to tell you how things look, but to me, this thing does look faintly ridiculous. It looks like it appeals to young people lacking taste, but it's got a sticker price at well north of £30,000 that is clearly unattainable. So what's it doing? Who's it aimed at? Because the type of person that can afford to spend 35 grand on a hot hatch, I don't think wants to be seen in something quite as leery as this. The other aspect is the dynamics. I think everything that this car does, it probably does slightly better than a Golf R. I think it's more sophisticated in terms of suspension. I think the engine's better, the gearbox is better. This is a boosty engine, so 3,000 RPM, push the throttle, pulls immediately and then just keeps going all the way to what, 7,000 RPM. I think it's the best engine in a hot hatchback. I love the chassis playfulness with it as well. I know we're on the public highway, but if you want to make this thing move around, you really can. But that engine, God. And how does it get all the power onto the road? Bumpy road, this. No torque fight. Yeah. The art of front-wheel drive has become really, really clever, hasn't it? One wonders whether the Focus RS actually needs to be four-wheel drive, because I think this car is more fun and it's two-wheel drive. But is its dynamic advantage over a Golf R enough to overcome this cabin, which I'll come to in a second, and those exterior looks? I don't think so. I think it just is too much of an eyeful. And the cabin, blimey. Well, first of all, the seat is superb and it's set low. Well done, Honda. The rest of this stuff, I have to say, is fairly baffling. To start with, very little can be done on the fly. You can't hook your phone up on the fly. You can't engage or disengage the auto blipper, which is very good for the manual gearbox. Everything has to be done when you stop. Baffling. This screen here, I've had a 5-10 minute play. Don't really know where I'm at. It is illogical at best, but I'm sure if you live with it, you'll get used to it. I have to give them that space. I do like the boost gauge on the big central readout as well. But all in all, this is an eyeful in here. And it's like the exterior of the car. To me, it's aimed at someone between the age of 18 and 24. And I know the Instagram generation is well heeled these days, but I don't know how many of them can afford to buy one of these things. But I have to applaud Honda for getting back in the hot hatch game in a fearless way, this is a top car. And if you like your hot hatches to drive, well, this has got to be right up there on the list. But I will say, it's a big car. Hot hatches have become very, very big. This thing could easily be an Accord. This is the Italian M3, Alfa's answer to AMG. And boy does it need to be good, because the world needs great Italian cars. And this is surely Alfa's last real chance. So, into its voluptuous four-door saloon body, Alfa has dropped a thumping 512 horsepower twin-turbocharged 2.9-litre V6. Peak torque is 443 foot-pounds. Curb weight is 1,524 kilograms thanks to expensive bits like carbon prop shaft and bonnet. The car is rear-wheel drive, and only the 8-speed ZF automatic is coming to the UK. The test car was a manual, don't ask, and was fitted with optional carbon ceramic brakes. Please, please, let it not be another false dawn rubbish Alfa. And the news is very, very good indeed. On the road, this is a more comfortable car than the M3. It's got some adaptive dampers here, and you can put them into a soft mode, which is independent of the kind of powertrain DNA. So you can have shorter throttle and louder exhaust and all that stuff, but you can still slacken the dampers off. And like that, this car has an advantage over the BMW, and I'm really pleased they've done that. It also feels like it's got more rubber in the suspension, so tyre and suspension noise is quieter than it is in the BMW too. This is quite a refined car. For long miles, it'll be a good thing to be inside. This manual gearbox, I'm not so sure about that. Shift quality is a bit rubbery, clutch, pedal and movement's not the best. I thought I'd love the manual. The fact that we're not going to get it doesn't worry me at all, in the UK that is. And the cabin, well, it's a pretty good place to sit actually. I'm comfortable, the seat is good and low. This is the optional carbon seat. The driving position is excellent. You can make up your minds whether it looks good or not. I think it looks great. It feels Italian. Okay, some of the materials are not quite as good as they are in the M3, but you know what? If you buy a car based on that, you're nuts anyway. So as a road car, I think this thing is genuinely pleasant. I mean that. It'll be good for long journeys, but it also has 500 horsepower. It's a bit too much to exploit on the public highway. So I'm going to go somewhere and let it kind of show what it can do. So here we are at a circuit, which is both a good thing and a bad thing, because this is a beautiful facility to use, but it's also the home of Alfa Romeo, their test track Balocco, and it won't come as any surprise for you to realise that if the Giulia Quadrifoglio is going to work anywhere, it's going to work here because it was developed here. So what do we think? First of all, this engine is really exciting. I think in terms of a turbocharged motor that really goes at the top end, this might be the best one I've ever driven. This is a seriously fast car. I reckon it's 10% quicker than an M3. But what it doesn't do is get going from low down in quite the same way as the M3. The torque peak is higher, but then it's more exciting at the top end. So actually it probably is a more exciting motor, but it doesn't have that crazy torque low down. In fact, sometimes you feel yourself saying, oh, come on, get going. Also, the calibration I talked about on the road that's a bit fluffy, well, it doesn't matter so much on the circuit because you're up it and going. What about this chassis? Well, first of all, can we just stop and celebrate the fact that I'm driving a rear-wheel drive 500 horsepower Alfa Romeo? I didn't think I'd ever say that, so I'm just so happy, but I mustn't let it cloud my objectivity. What have we got here? Well, this is supposed to be lighter than an M3, but it feels bigger and bulkier than an M3, so that's not necessarily a good thing. It's on a sticky Corsa tyre, have second gear. Yeah, the front of the car is great. A little bit of understeer and wash out, but you can neutralise that with the throttle because it's got so much torque. Is it really kind of slidable? Well, let's see. Yes, it really is. It's got ample torque to do that stuff all day long. I don't feel a great sense of connection in the car. You know, how steering and everything else kind of gets in the way of that. And I do feel more connected in an M3. So where are we? I think we've got a chassis that can play comfortable on the road and super playful on the track, which is just what you want, isn't it? Brakes, massive ceramic things, so yeah, they're pretty damn good. Brake pedal feel, pretty good. Again, the whole thing's a little bit inert, but that's what you expect of quite a big saloon car. Engine revs out beautifully, it really does. There are a couple of things worth noting. The variable differential, the calibration about the way it works with the engine's torque, I don't think it's quite as slick as you have in either the Mercedes C63 or the M3. It's not quite there, but then, you know, these guys, I suppose, haven't done rear-wheel drive for about 20 or 30 years, so they've got to start somewhere, haven't they? Okay, I've got the dampers in the stiffest setting now, and what it is revealing is that the rear axle location maybe isn't quite up to the BMW either. Occasionally it does feel like there's quite a bit of rubber in a sub-mount or something that's not fully connected there, but God, I'm splitting hairs. What I love is you can just do this kind of thing. I mean, come on, it's an Alfa and we can do that. It's just magnificent. Alfa that's letting go of the back axle at 160 k's. All is well with the world. Criticisms? Well, the ESP system means that you can turn it off when you go into the full race mode, which gives you the noisy engine and crispy throttle response, but if you trigger the ABS when you've got that switched off, it brings some intervention back in, which means that transitions are a problem. I know that's going to be a massive concern for all people that buy these cars when they're driving them through Fulham, but it's still something worth noting. For example, that doesn't happen in some of the German brands. I think you know what I'm getting at here. If you look at every single discipline of performance, most of them, the BMW and the Mercedes do a little bit better, if you ask me, but it's tiny degrees. Where the Alfa counters, it's got this ride comfort that the BMW can't match, and I think that's a big thing on the road. But if you add them all up, it just misses out in certain little areas. Yes, the engine's better at the top end, but I think the noise of this at low revs is a bit of a letdown. It's great when you get up it. So is it as good as an M3? Objectively, no, I don't think it is, but it's not a million miles off, and it looks fantastic. I know it's subjective, and it's Alfa Romeo. Wow, it's a lovely combination. And I think however many they bring into the UK, they'll sell all of them. I think it'll be a success. I just think it's the car that people want to drive. So it's a great effort, a really, really great effort. Did we really expect them to turn out and beat the best in the class straight out? No, we didn't. So well done, you guys. I like this car. I like Moloko. I'm going to go have an espresso and pretend I'm Italian.